Britten was a good writer for everybody. He had such an insight into virtually every instrument of the orchestra. It may seem naive to quote the young person's guide, but that you've really got to listen to that, to the variations for every single instrument and the families to see how he really understood writing for instruments. And allied to that, it's a joy for me to play a lot of his music because he does feature the double bass quite heavily.
A famous aspect of wartime musical life to which Britten returned was the series of lunchtime concerts at the National Gallery. The orchestra of the RAF Central Band was a regular fixture. At the back of the orchestra was a 20-year-old horn player whom Britten was shortly to meet and who was to have a vital role in the serenade. This player was to become legendary. His name was Dennis Brain.
On this instrument you have valves, and by combining the series of notes that you can obtain on each valve, you can get a complete chromatic scale like this.
Dennis Brain was a really prodigiously talented player. His dentist, who I once saw, was an expert on wind playing and told me that Dennis had the most perfect teeth and so on, and he said they were just right. I don't actually think that explains his great talent, but he was extraordinary. Britten came across him during the war, and he was very struck by Dennis Brain's ability to play with such ease. He said clarinet-like facility and accuracy, which was very suitable for Britten. I think he picked up on that rather English characteristic of clarity.
In his contact with Brain, he must have then formed all kinds of possibilities of what colours you could get out of horn. He could sing, he could scream, and he could dance, and he could do all the things that one thinks the horns are a bit too creaky in the joints to do.
Oh, yes. How did you do it? You moved the valve very slowly, did you?
Yes, it's very dangerous.
I know. I'm just telling clarinet players they can do that. It's going ping, ping, ping. If you go, fabulously guarded, but it might squeak.
Ben Britten is a very precise thinker and technically very expert. I think he took great trouble to find out if he didn't know too. He would talk to the players and ask them things, is this possible, and so on.
The first performance of the Serenade shared the billing with a piece by my father at the Wigmore Hall in October 1943.
It so happened that I was able, in wartime, to get to the Wigmore Hall for the first performance of the Serenade. Of course, Peter was the soloist, Dennis Brain was the horn player, and the orchestra was conducted by Walter Gurr. I do remember thinking at the time how extraordinary it was that the Serenade actually didn't just have one soloist, but in fact two soloists, indeed that it was a kind of a concerto, if you like, for voice and horn and orchestra.
The third song in the cycle is William Blake's dark lamentation for lost innocence, The Sick Roads.
It's interesting, the pairing of the horn and the tenor, I think, because they're two slightly edgy instruments. You know, the horn and the tenor are the voice and instrument that crack most often in tense situations.
Thou art sick in
we begin to sense something which he developed very strongly later on, which is an ambivalent attitude to nature, which comes to fruition in the turn of the screw. He picks up the idea of the dangers that lie in natural beauty and the decay that is threatening everybody. I think it belongs to that part of Britten's heart, which was for him his most vulnerable.
Yeah, we're a rose. Rose, thou art sick. I mean, this is a bad piece.
Yeah.
Yes, you look all right, but I know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Whoa. Rose, thou art sick. The invisible. Yeah, that doesn't say that. The invisible one. Although invisible is too bland.
It's quite worm-like.
The word worm is bad enough. Worm. The invisible worm, not the ones, not the larder beetles that come out at night.
Shortly after the Wigmore Hall premiere of the Serenade, Britten took Piers and Brain into the recording studio. The discs even reached Australia in wartime.
I had just left school, and we managed to get hold of those old Decca 78s, shipped out from England, I suppose. And the Serenade reached us like the scales falling from our eyes. In this case, I suppose it would be the muffs from our ears. And it seemed to us, not only was a great musician arriving, a great composer, but it seemed as though here was something that really did justify the existence of poetry as well.
Let's do figure 14, please. Christ receive. Bomb. It's very noisy in here. Will it go any quieter?
The dirge is a medieval dialect warning of the terrifying horrors of purgatory.
Just as vicious, but further away.